Hello and welcome to Upstart Goblin University, Hardleg Gaming's guide to tactics and strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm Hardleg Joe, and in this lesson I'll be explaining the concept of card advantage, showing you how to calculate it, and discussing the pros and cons of card advantage theory. Card advantage, in its most basic terms, simply refers to how many cards you have, either in your hand or on your field, in relation to your opponent. Whichever player has the most cards has card advantage. Card advantage theory is a method of deck building and playing that focuses on maintaining card advantage as a means to secure victory. To some of you this may seem obvious, but to those of you who don't understand, think of it like this. Every card is like a weapon or a piece of armor. It has the potential to either deal damage to your opponent or keep you from taking damage. If you have 6 cards and your opponent only has 1, it's like a fully armored samurai fighting a kid with a baseball bat. It's not even a competition. Even if your opponent has more life points than you now have so many options, and your opponent so few, it's unlikely they'll be able to defend themselves or launch a counterattack. This is the point of card advantage theory. Looking at the game through the lens of card advantage, it's easy to determine which cards are best and how best to use them, based on how much advantage those cards generate. To calculate advantage, you simply subtract how many cards you lose when you make a play from the amount of cards your opponent loses. So for example, let's look at the monster card, Breaker the Magical Warrior. This card has an effect that lets you destroy 1 spell trap on your opponent's side of the field. Since your opponent loses 1 card, and you lose none, using Breaker's effect is a clear example of a +1. Mystical Space Typhoon also destroys 1 spell trap on the field. But, because it's a spell card, it's sent to the graveyard after you play it, making it an inherent -1. Since playing MST results in both you and your opponent being down 1 card, Mystical Space Typhoon generates 0 advantage. The spell card Dark Core, meanwhile, lets you banish an opponent's monster by discarding a card as cost. In this case, you're losing 2 cards, both Dark Core itself and the card you discard as cost, while your opponent only loses their 1 monster. This makes Dark Core a -1. In all those instances, calculating advantage is pretty simple, but in an actual game it can be a little trickier. For starters, many cards generate variable amounts of advantage depending on how and when they're used. Dark Hole, for example, can be a +4, a -6, or anywhere in between, depending on how many monsters there are in the field at the time. Even with all that in mind though, creating a deck using card advantage theory is still fairly simple. By listing out all the cards in your deck along with the amount of advantage they're likely to generate, you should be able to give a rough numerical value to how good that deck is. This is the theory's main strength. It allows players to deck build intelligently, reduce the amount of trial and error needed to refine their deck, and it can help them to highlight ineffective and inefficient cards. The downside of card advantage theory is that it fails to account for floaters, burn damage, and floodgates. A floater is an unofficial term for a card that replaces itself after it leaves the field. All of the Yang Zing monsters, for example, special summon another Yang Zing from the deck after they're destroyed. So if your opponent has 4 Yang Zings on the field, using Dark Hole won't generate you any advantage. In fact, you'll just go -1 since you'll have 1 less card, while your opponent's number of cards will remain the same. Burn damage, meanwhile, is an unofficial term for life point damage that is dealt directly by card effects as opposed to attacks. Magic Cylinder, for example, looks terrible through the lens of card advantage. It's a clear -1 that destroys none of your opponent's cards. However, because it has the potential to deal such massive amounts of burn damage, it can be worth the loss in many decks. Finally, a Floodgate is an unofficial term used to describe a card that severely limits your opponent's ability to play. Vanity's Emptiness, for example, is a continuous trap that prevents either player from special summoning. Once again, this card generates no actual advantage, but because many decks rely on special summons to get their monsters on the field, it's still incredibly useful. Against certain decks, a well-timed Emptiness can lock your opponent out of being able to play at all, meaning victory regardless of how many cards they have. Wildcard elements like these are the reason why making use of card advantage theory is not a 100% guarantee of success. Regardless of its flaws though, an understanding of card advantage and its corresponding theory are still incredibly useful. By understanding and using it, you should be able to build and play much more effective and competitive decks. That's it for this lesson of Upstart Goblin University. Don't forget to like and share if you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more lessons, you can check out my channel and subscribe if you'd like updates. Thanks for watching, good luck, and have fun!